Already know that Amazon is laying people off. You've seen the headlines, but what you probably miss is that this isn't a cost cutting story. It's something much stranger and much more consequential than that. Because here's the thing, Amazon is simultaneously firing the most experienced engineers, replacing them with people who have never touched a code base, mandating an unproven internal AI tool that nobody has asked for, building spyware to make sure people use it, and then watching their own systems delete production environments serving millions of customers and calling it progress. That's not a company executing a strategy. It's really a company setting itself on fire and writing a press release about the transformation. And if you're working in tech or adjacent to tech or just want to keep earning what you're earning over the next 5 years, this story is about you. Because Amazon is not the exception right now. It's the blueprint that every other enterprise is watching. Let's get into it. Here's the contradiction at the center of all this. The official narrative coming out of big tech right now is that AI is making companies more productive, leaner, faster, and better. That's what the pitch to Wall Street is all about. That's what CEOs are saying on their earning calls. Andy Jassy, Amazon CEO, has specifically told investors that AI will handle the heavy lifting and that engineers will shift to reviewing and guiding AI output rather than writing code themselves. It sounds clean and reasonable, actually, if you don't look too closely, but what's actually happening on the ground is almost the opposite. Massive outages, lost revenue, engineers protesting internal mandates, institutional knowledge walking out the door with every layoff, and an AI tool built internally with no track record deleting live production environments because it decided that was the most efficient fix. Amazon's pitch to Wall Street is that AI was going to handle everything, but it's going and deleting really important things. That's the gap between the story that they're telling and the story that's actually unfolding. And that gap is where careers are currently dying every day if you're not paying attention. So let's walk through what actually happened in order because the sequence matters. And it all starts with layoffs. So this past October, Amazon cut 30,000 people. That's the biggest single reduction they've made since 2022 when they cut 27,000 employees back to back within a few years of each other. Those two events alone represent a level of workforce disruption that would have been front page news for a year in any prior decade. And Jassy didn't dress it up. He said directly, and this is a quote, "The growing integration of AI tools is likely to result in further job reductions, especially through automation and repetitive tasks." He is not hiding the mechanism. He's announcing it. AI is making your job redundant, so we're cutting you. Thank you for your service. Now, look at the broader context for 2025. The tech layoffs were up 65% compared to 2024. That's not a bad quarter. That's an industry-wide directional shift. Layoffs.fyi tracked over 150,000 tech layoffs in the first half of 2025 alone. A Challenger Gray and Christmas report noted that 38% of announced layoffs in 2025 cited AI implementation as the explicit reason for reduction. And that's the first time in history that a technology-specific justification displaced restructuring as the leading cause. Let that sink in for a second. Companies are now comfortable saying out loud in writing that AI is why they're cutting people. The plausible deniability is gone. And here's what the Goldman Sachs research says underpins all this. They projected in 2023 that AI could automate tasks equivalent to 300 million full-time jobs globally, with white-collar tech roles disproportionately hit in the early waves. McKinsey put a number on the timeline. By 2030, 30% of working hours could be automated. Software development and data processing are among the most exposed categories on the list, not manufacturing or truck driving, but software development. Now, let's talk about who specifically Amazon is replacing these people with, because this is where it gets more complicated than just AI is taking jobs. In fiscal 25, Amazon secured over 10,000 H-1B visa approvals, up from roughly 9,000 the year before. And they outplaced Meta, Microsoft, and Google combined in sponsorships. If you go through the LCA documentation, the government paperwork that's publicly available, you can see what roles they're filling. It's not general software engineers anymore. It's predominantly AI-specific roles. They're building out teams that build the AI. The argument you'll hear is that they're just suppressing wages. And yes, data from the National Foundation for American Policy shows H-1B workers in tech earn 8 to 15 less than US-born workers in equivalent roles. That is real, but it's not the main story. The average base salary across Amazon's H-1B visa-sponsored roles was about $149,000, which are not cheap replacements. The real story is something more structural. Visa-dependent workers have dramatically reduced negotiation leverage. They can't easily leave. They can't push back on mandates without risking their status. They are, in a very practical sense, a more controllable workforce. And when you're trying to rapidly implement an AI strategy that your own engineers are protesting, controllability matters. Now, layer on the tool mandate, because this is where decisions go from aggressive to genuinely strange. Amazon looked at the full landscape of available AI coding tools, Cursor, Claude Code, GitHub Copilot, tools that have been vetted, adopted at scale, and are actively loved by developers across industry. Stack Overflow's 2024 developer survey showed adoption rates above 60% for these tools among professional developers. MIT research found that engineers using self-selected familiar AI tools showed 26% productivity gains. That's real, measurable productivity improvement. Amazon said no to all of it. They built their own tool instead. They called it Cairo. And in November 25, they circulated an internal memo making it mandatory. No more Cursor, no more Claude Code, switch to Cairo. It's exactly like if the CEO of McDonald's told every employee who commuted by Tesla that effective immediately Teslas were banned. McDonald's had been quietly developing its own vehicle, something called the Burger Mobile, and every employee would be expected to drive that to work from now on. You'd think it was insane, but that's precisely the logic Amazon applied to its engineering tools. We don't care what works, use ours. And roughly 1,500 employees signed a protest document. They weren't saying they wouldn't hit the 80% AI usage target. They weren't saying they didn't want to use AI at all. They were saying these other tools are proven, we use them, we like them, can we please keep using them? A simple, reasonable request. It was ignored. Then the surveillance piece entered the picture. Amazon built an internal monitoring system called Clarity. That name alone should tell you something. Clarity tracks which AI tools engineers are using, how often, and whether they're trending towards the 80% AI-assisted development target. Managers can see individual usage data. They can see exactly who is and isn't meeting the metric. And this feeds directly into performance reviews, which determine compensation. Software engineers are not stupid. If your raise depends on a usage metric, you will hit that usage metric, whether it produces good work or not. That's not a productivity system. It's a compliance system dressed up as a productivity system. And the Harvard Business Review found that algorithmic performance monitoring reduced intrinsic motivation by 21% among high-performing knowledge workers specifically. The people most likely to have other options, the people you most need to retain. This is the setup. Now, here's what it produced. His name isn't public. He's just an Amazon engineer who did what he was told. He used Kiro, the mandated internal tool, to work on a code base serving production environments in mainland China. He gave Kiro access to the code. Kiro assessed the situation and determined the optimal remediation for the bug it found was to delete the production environment entirely and start fresh. So that's what it did. What followed was a 13-hour AWS outage. And if you haven't worked in large-scale cloud infrastructure, let me give you the translation for what 13 hours actually means in context. Most outages resolve in under 10 minutes. Many are auto-remediated before a human even sees them. AWS runs a massive percentage of the modern web. When a region goes down, the cost per minute is exorbitant. 13 hours doesn't mean 13 hours of downtime. It means an on-call engineer was paged. They have 10 to 15 minutes to acknowledge and begin triage. And then they spend 13 hours working backward from a deleted production environment that an AI decided to vaporize. Amazon's official response was that it was a coincidence that AI tools were involved. That's a direct quote. A coincidence. And if it were a single incident, you could at least debate that, but it wasn't. In March 2025, Amazon's internal AI assistant, Q, a separate system, broke checkout at Amazon.com for 120,000 users. The postmortem documented approximately 1.6 million site-wide errors and 120,000 lost orders. Then, just a few days later, another outage on Amazon.com, much larger, 6.3 million lost orders. Amazon said that one was a software code deployment issue, not the AI tool, the deployment. 3 major incidents, 3 explanations that pointed anywhere but at the tooling decisions made by leadership. Here's what's important to understand about why all this is happening and why it's not just Amazon being uniquely bad at this. The institutional knowledge piece is the thing that most people who haven't worked in large-scale software engineering organizations miss entirely. When you think about why a senior engineer is valuable at a company like Amazon, most people think it's the code they write. It's really not. Even before AI, a staff engineer's primary value wasn't their output, it was their memory. They know why an if statement that looked wrong is actually intentional. They remember the incident from 4 years ago that caused the decision. They can look at a proposed change and say, based on nothing documented anywhere, that if we do this, it breaks 3 things downstream that aren't immediately obvious. That knowledge isn't in any ticket system. It's not in the code base. It lives in people's heads. And it was built over years. A Brookings Institution study found that when companies lose more than 15 to 20% of senior technical staff within 18 months, the average time to recover operational efficiency exceeds 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years. Software-dependent companies had the steepest recovery curves of any category studied. Amazon didn't just lose some people, they lost critical mass of institutional memory. Then they replaced those people with the engineers who are new to the code base on visa dependencies that limit their ability to push back. And then they had an AI tool rapidly transform the code base so that even the remaining tenured engineers are now working with something unfamiliar. The continuity was deliberately severed on every axis simultaneously. The NASA parallel here is worth raising. After the Columbia shuttle disaster, investigators identified institutional knowledge degradation as a contributing systematic factor, especially people who had forgotten why certain safety protocols existed. The engineers who had built the original reasoning were gone. And when situations arose that required that reasoning, it wasn't available. That's now a canonical case studied in enterprise risk management. Amazon is replicating it in real time, but here's the structural reason why companies are doing this anyways, even though they know the risks. The incentive structure for public company CEOs runs on a roughly 2 to 4 year horizon tied to stock price. AI investment is currently being rewarded by markets almost regardless of operational outcomes. When Jassy says AI is the biggest transformation since the internet, the market responds. The stock moves. His compensation improves. The long-term cost of institutional knowledge loss doesn't show up on an earnings call. The 13-hour outage gets called a coincidence. The 6.3 million lost orders gets called a deployment issue. The narrative stays clean for Wall Street, even as the technical infrastructure quietly degrades. The people who pay the price are the engineers in the on-call rotation at 2 a.m. who get paged because an AI deleted a production environment. And the mid-career professionals who got cut in the October layoffs are now looking at a job market where the average time to hire for senior engineers stretches 6 to 9 months in 2025, up from 3 to 4 months in 2022. The financial pressure is real, and it's compressing the runway for people who thought they had more time to figure this out. And here's the thing that about 78% of large enterprises that now deploy some form of employee monitoring software. That was 30% in 2019. The Clarity system at Amazon is not an anomaly. It's an early aggressive version of something that is spreading. The question for mid-career professionals isn't whether your company will eventually do some version of this. It's whether you've positioned yourself so that you have options when it does. Because here's what actually matters coming out of all this. The companies that are blindly executing this playbook, firing institutional knowledge, mandating unproven tools, building surveillance systems to drive compliance, these are the companies that are going to spend the next 3 to 5 years cleaning up operational failures that nobody will officially acknowledge were self-inflicted. The Brookings timeline isn't theoretical. It's what the data shows happens. But there's a parallel story unfolding in the job market that doesn't get told as much. And this is where the framing changes. The same AI disruption that's allowing companies to justify mass layoffs is also creating a very specific window for professionals who understand how to position themselves in it. The IEEE survey from 2024 found that 67% of software engineering managers cited loss of code-based context as their most pressing risk. Companies are going to need people who can navigate legacy systems, communicate institutional knowledge, bridge the gap between AI-generated code and real operational accountability. That's not a junior skill. It's not an offshoreable skill. It's specifically the kind of thing that mid-career professionals with real depth are positioned to do. The MIT research on developer productivity tools is worth restating in this light. Engineers are using self-selected, familiar AI tooling, showing 26% productivity gains. The professionals who are building fluency with Cursor, Claude Code, GitHub Copilot, the tools that are actually dominant in the market are building a portable, differentiated skill set precisely because enterprise mandates like Amazon keep creating fragmentation. Companies that run Kiro experiments end up coming back to the market tools. And when they do, the people who know how to use those tools are the ones they hire. The 149K average base salary for H-1B visa sponsorship also tells you something important. The ceiling on well-positioned AI-fluent professionals is not getting suppressed right now. It's the engineers who stay in their lane, did repetitive execution work, and didn't develop strategic positioning who are getting replaced. The people being cut are not the people who understood where value is migrating. They're the people who assume the job they have today will still be their job tomorrow, even if they just stay in their lane. That assumption is gone. Amazon made it official when Jassy put it in public quote. The honest framing of this moment is something like, your income is not protected by your tenure, it's protected by your positioning. And right now, most mid-career professionals have a tenure without positioning. It's not a death sentence. It's just where most people are when industries shift faster than individuals can track. But the shift is trackable. The data is public. The LCA documents are downloadable. The layoff numbers are on layoffs.fyi. None of this is hidden. What most people don't have is the structure to act on it, which is a different problem than not seeing it coming. If you're earning 80 to 180K right now, and you've been watching the tech market shift with some combination of concerns and paralysis, the question isn't whether to do something. That question is already answered. The question is whether you're going to build something in the next 90 days that changes your trajectory so that you have a next remote job lined up for you, that you have multiple interviews in the pipeline, that you have choice and you're not left stagnant if layoffs come knocking. Whether you're a developer or in business or in sales or in marketing, anything even remotely related to tech, this stuff is coming for your field of work. So if you're watching this and you're like, dang, I really should take my career seriously, I should be extremely proactive over the next 20 to 24 months while we still have the ability to get jobs, and you want to get a higher paying job, you potentially want to stack multiple remote jobs. We've run the job search for over 500 professionals from Meta, Netflix, Airbnb, Google, ESPN, Accenture, and more, helping them land and stack remote jobs. Sometimes we even offer a 90-day placement guarantee if you meet certain qualifications. So if you want to see if you qualify for that, you can click the link down below. And if you're just here for daily updates on the job market, we release a new video roughly every business day. So make sure you subscribe and follow to stay on the cutting edge of what's happening in AI. See you in the next video.